Welcome to the iRogya Wellness Podcast, your quick guide to a healthier life. In each episode, we'll explore practical tips and insights to help you on your journey to optimal health and well-being. Let's dive in.
Okay, so PFAS, right?
Mm-hmm.
It seems like it's everywhere these days. And honestly,
Yeah.
I'm feeling a little overwhelmed. I think a lot of people are.
Yeah.
These forever chemicals.
Right.
So we're going to do a deep dive today into what they are, why everyone's making such a fuss, and what you can actually do about it.
Okay.
So where do we even begin with this?
Well, I think the first thing is to try and sort of, break it down, right, what PFAS actually are.
Yeah.
So basically, it's a massive group of man-made chemicals.
Okay.
Thousands of them, actually.
Wow. Thousands.
Yeah, over 4,700.
Okay.
And they were actually first made back in the 1940s.
Okay.
And they got really popular really fast because they had this really useful ability to resist things like water and grease, stains, all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And I bet you've encountered them, every day without even realizing it.
Yeah. I mean, like, I know there are nonstick pans and stuff, right?
Exactly.
That's in those waterproof jackets. Everyone's got one.
Yeah.
So they are really in everything. I mean, I've even heard about them being in firefighting foam, even makeup.
That's right. They've been incredibly useful, right, in so many different areas. But that's sort of where the problem comes in because they're so good at what they do. They're so strong.
Yeah.
They don't really break down, like, in the environment or in our bodies.
I see.
And so that's where that name forever chemicals comes from.
Okay, yeah, I see how that's a problem.
Yeah.
So if these chemicals are sticking around, forever chemicals,
Yeah.
what's that mean for our health long term?
That's the big question, right?
Yeah.
And, well, the thing about them being persistent is that they can kind of build up
Okay.
in our bodies and in the environment, and that means we're exposed for a long time.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's been, studies have linked that exposure to some pretty serious health issues.
Like what?
Well, you're talking about things like higher risks of certain cancers, reproductive problems, issues with your immune system working the way it should,
Okay.
and even developmental problems in kids.
Developmental problems. Wow, that's really concerning.
Yeah.
I mean, are kids like extra vulnerable to these chemicals?
Yeah, unfortunately they are. I mean,
Right.
their bodies are still developing.
Right.
They're just more sensitive to the effects of this kind of exposure.
Right.
Plus, let's be honest, kids are putting things in their mouths way more than adults do.
That's true, yeah. Always exploring.
Exactly. So that's, toys, their hands, anything really.
Yeah.
There's just a higher chance they're going to ingest PFAS.
Okay, so that's definitely concerning. I mean, is there anything we can do? What steps can we take to kind of, protect ourselves and our families? I do know that the EPA just set some drinking water standards,
We
right,
did.
for PFAS. Is that kind of the answer we've been waiting for?
I mean, it's definitely a step in the right direction, for sure. So the new standards basically set these limits for 6 specific PFAS chemicals in the water, which is huge.
All right.
Because for a long time, there weren't any federal regulations on this at all.
Wow.
So this means water systems now have to start actually doing something to bring those levels down.
Okay, but I got to ask, I mean, if there are over 4,700
Right.
of these chemicals, like, why are we only regulating 6? I mean, it seems like we're just kind of scratching the surface here, right?
Yeah, that's a really important point, and you're right, it is just a fraction of the total PFAS chemicals out there.
Right.
And we have to remember, too, they're not just in our water.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about a few things.
Yeah.
But they're also in our food, they're in consumer products, they're even in the air.
Oh, wow. So what are we supposed to do? Just like hope for the best?
No, not at all. There are actually a lot of things you can do to minimize your exposure.
Okay.
Like just being informed, that's huge.
Yeah.
Now that you kind of know what to look for, you can start making, smarter choices about the products you're bringing into your house, the foods you're eating.
So like read labels carefully, try to choose fresh foods over processed whenever possible.
Exactly.
Being mindful of things like those nonstick pans.
Right, exactly. And when it comes to your drinking water, I mean, filtration is key.
Right.
There are specific types of filters that are designed to really effectively remove PFAS.
Okay, but there's so many different filters on the market. Like, how do I know which ones actually work? What am I looking for?
It can be overwhelming, for sure.
Yeah.
A good place to start, look for filters that have been certified by reputable organizations
Sure.
like NSF International.
Okay.
They have specific standards for PFAS removal, so you can be sure that the filter actually does what it says it does.
Okay, so not just any old filter. It's got to be something specific to target PFAS.
Exactly. They're not all created equal. You need one that uses technologies like granular activated carbon or ion exchange to actually get rid of these chemicals.
Okay.
And speaking of effective filters, there's one in particular I think is worth looking at.
Yeah.
The Puritii filter.
Okay. Yeah. I've heard good things.
Yeah.
So what makes it so special when it comes to PFAS?
Well, one of the things that really sets it apart is that it's got a 2-stage filtration system
Okay.
that's specifically designed to tackle, a wide range of contaminants, including PFAS.
Tuesday, that sounds pretty intense.
It is.
How does that work?
Okay, so the first stage, the water goes through this blend of zeolite and activated coconut shell carbon.
Okay.
Now, zeolite's pretty interesting. It's a mineral with this honeycomb-like structure.
Okay.
And activated carbon, super porous.
Okay.
So basically imagine like tiny magnets
Okay.
that attract and trap the PFAS, along with a bunch of other chemical contaminants.
So the PFAS molecules get stuck to those little magnets, basically.
Yeah, exactly. It's called adsorption.
Okay.
And that's where the PFAS molecules actually bind to the surface of the zeolite and the activated carbon.
Okay.
And they're gone from the water.
Gotcha. And then what happens in the second stage?
So the second stage has this pleated filter,
Okay.
like this super fine mesh.
Okay.
And that acts like a physical barrier.
Okay.
It's going to catch any particles that are left over.
Oh, okay.
So that could be things like microplastics or sediment
Right.
or any other contaminants that snuck through the first stage.
So it's like a 1-2 punch.
Exactly.
First, gets trapped, and then anything else is just physically filtered out.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So, I mean, okay, that makes sense, but how do we know for sure
Yeah.
that it does what it says it's going to do?
Right. Well, you should always be skeptical
Yeah.
and do your research. But the great thing about the Puritii filter is that it's been tested independently.
Okay.
And it's been verified to remove over 90% of PFOA and PFOS.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. And those are two of the most common and concerning, PFAS chemicals.
Right. And those tests, those were done by like a third party, right?
Absolutely.
Not the company that makes the filter.
No, independent testing is super important
Yeah.
when you're talking about water filtration.
Right.
It just makes sure you're getting like accurate, unbiased information.
Right. You're not being misled.
Exactly.
And I think you mentioned earlier, it's NSF certified, right?
It is.
So can you just remind us what that means?
Yeah, so NSF International is this global public health and safety organization.
Okay.
They basically set standards for a bunch of different products.
Okay.
Water filters are one of them.
Okay.
And to get certified, a filter has to meet like really strict standards.
Okay.
So we're talking about contaminant removal, material safety, structural integrity, all of that.
Okay. So it's like a seal of approval.
Yeah.
Like it's been vetted by, somebody else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when you see that mark, that NSF mark, you know it's been tested.
Right.
And it's proven to perform the way they say it will.
So it sounds like this Puritii filter, when it checks all the boxes, right? Effective at removing the PFAS. Independent testing.
Yep.
NSF certified. I mean, that's pretty impressive.
It really is a comprehensive solution.
Yeah.
And I haven't even touched on the convenience factor yet.
Okay.
Being able to take it with you,
Right.
that's a game changer.
Oh, yeah.
The gym, work, even when you're traveling.
So you don't have to, worry about buying bottled water.
Exactly.
Which is, good for the environment and our wallets.
Absolutely. One Puritii filter can replace, hundreds of plastic water bottles.
Wow. And speaking of the environment, I mean, the filter itself, it's eco-friendly too, right?
Yeah.
It's made with sustainable materials. It's built to last.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, if we're connecting this to the bigger picture, it's not just about removing a couple of chemicals.
Right.
It's really about taking control of our health,
Yeah.
reducing our impact on the planet.
Yeah.
And it's a sustainable solution
Absolutely.
for clean drinking water wherever you are.
It's about making those conscious choices,
Yeah.
right? That help us and the planet.
Well, I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here.
Really have.
We've really gone deep into the science behind PFAS.
Uh-huh.
We've talked about, the potential risks.
Yeah.
And we've highlighted some things that you can actually do.
Yeah.
Practical steps to reduce your exposure.
Exactly. And we've seen how the Puritii filter can really give you that clean, healthy water
Right.
wherever you are.
But before we wrap up, I got one more question for you.
Okay.
Knowing what you now know about PFAS, how are you going to prioritize clean water in your own life?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
For me, it's about staying informed
Okay.
and making those choices right.
Yeah.
Like, I'm definitely going to be paying more attention to those product labels,
Yeah.
the food packaging.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm sticking with my Puritii filter,
Right.
that clean water at home and on the go.
Yeah.
It's really about those small steps, right?
Yeah.
That can make a big difference overall.
I love that. It's not about being perfect.
No.
It's about, being informed and making choices that you feel good about.
Exactly. And I really encourage all the listeners to do the same.
Yeah.
Take some time, learn about PFAS and what you can do.
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
It is.
And we all have the power to make things healthier, more sustainable.
Well said. And remember, listeners, we've got a ton of resources in the show notes,
Yeah.
links, more info about PFAS,
Yep.
the Puritii filter. Check those out if you want to dive even deeper.
Absolutely. There's a lot of information out there.
Yeah.
It's easy to find.
This has been a really incredible deep dive.
Yeah.
It's complex,
Yeah.
this whole issue,
Yeah.
but armed with knowledge and the right tools, we can make a difference.
I agree. Thanks for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us on this journey. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay hydrated.
Yes.
With clean filtered water, of course.
Of course.
Thanks for tuning in to the iRogaya Wellness Podcast. Remember, small steps lead to big changes. If you're curious about the products we mentioned today, you can find them all at irogaya.com. That's AIROGYA.com. And hey, use the code IROGYA15 at checkout for a 15% off discount. Please note that the code is not applicable for Europe, some parts of the Middle East, and South Africa. Until next time, keep taking those steps towards a healthier you.